He said it casually like it didn't matter. So you're alone tonight? We were standing in my kitchen, the overhead light buzzing faintly, the smell of coffee I hadn't finished still warm in the air. His jacket was draped over the back of the chair like he planned to stay longer than necessary. I remember the way his fingers tapped against the counter. Once, twice, waiting for my answer. I should have corrected him. My phone was face down beside the sink. My wedding ring caught the light when I reached for the mug, and for a second I thought that would be enough. That he'd notice. That he'd pause. That the moment would close itself. But he didn't look at my hand. He was watching my face. I felt the question settle between us, heavy and slow. Somewhere down the hall, the house made its usual nighttime sounds. A quiet creak, the hum of the refrigerator cycling on. Everything felt ordinary. Too ordinary for what was happening in my chest. My husband's away this week, he added, filling the silence for me. Not asking. Deciding. I inhaled. The mug warmed my palms. I nodded once, not yes, not no. Just enough. That was it. That was all it took. His shoulders loosened, like he'd been holding himself back until then. He stepped closer, not touching, just closing the space. I could feel the heat of him, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with coffee and something electric I didn't have a name for. You don't mind if I stay a bit? He asked softly. I looked at the clock on the wall, then at the door, then back at him. I guess not, I said. The words sounded small, almost innocent. But when his gaze dropped to my mouth and stayed there, I realized something irreversible had already happened. I didn't correct him when he thought I was alone. And the silence I chose felt louder than any confession I'd ever made. He'd been a friend first. That's the part one keeps circling back to, like it might somehow excuse what followed. We met through work. Long meetings, shared deadlines, jokes whispered during conference calls. He learned how I took my coffee before my own husband noticed I'd changed it. I learned the sound of his laugh before I ever saw his smile. Nothing crossed a line then. Not technically. That night in my kitchen, he leaned back against the counter like he belonged there. Like he'd done this before. He picked up a framed photo from the shelf. My husband and me at the coast last summer, sunburned and smiling. He's lucky, he said lightly. Not jealous. Just observant. I swallowed. We've been together a long time. He nodded, setting the frame down carefully, as if it mattered. Long time can be quiet. The word landed harder than it should have. I busied myself rinsing my mug, letting the water run longer than necessary. I felt him behind me then, not touching but close enough that my shoulders tightened. My breath changed. I hated how fast my body reacted to proximity alone. He's really gone all week? He asked. There it was again. Another chance. I turned off the faucet. The drip echoed in the sink. I could feel his eyes on the back of my neck, waiting. Yes, I said. The lie slid out smoother than the first silence. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath all evening. That must get lonely. I shrugged, trying to sound casual. You get used to things. But when I turned around, our faces were too close. I could see the faint crease between his brows, the way his jaw tightened like he was deciding something. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the walls were leaning in to listen. Outside, a car passed. Headlights swept briefly across the window and disappeared. Neither of us moved. That was when I understood the danger wasn't what he might do. It was what I was already allowing. He took a step closer, slow enough that I could have stopped it. I didn't. The counter pressed lightly into my back. The kitchen light softened everything, his face, the edges of the room, the moment itself. I became acutely aware of my own body. The way my shoulders rose with each breath, the quiet heat pooling low in my stomach, the pulse I felt in places I wasn't ready to name. You're tense, he said, almost gently. I'm fine. My voice didn't agree with me. He smiled at that, not smug, not predatory. Curious. Like he was discovering something fragile. He reached past me, careful, and turned off the overhead light. The room shifted instantly. Lamplight from the living room spilled in, warmer, lower. More forgiving. That's better, he murmured. It felt intentional. Everything did. We stood there, suspended. His hand rested on the counter beside mine. Close enough that our knuckles brushed when I shifted my weight. The contact was accidental. Didn't feel that way. I looked up at him then. Really looked. The familiar lines of his face felt altered by proximity. His eyes dropped again to my mouth. I caught myself wetting my lips and froze, aware of the smallest betrayals my body kept committing without my permission. You know, he said quietly, you don't have to explain anything to me. I wasn't going to. I know. The space between us narrowed without either of us stepping forward. I could feel his breath now warm against my cheek. My heart hammered so loudly I wondered if he could hear it. I thought of my husband's empty side of the bed, the quiet mornings, the polite distance that had slowly replaced touch. I thought of how easy it would be to end this one word, one step back. Instead, I tilted my head. Just slightly. His fingers brushed my wrist then, barely there, like a question he wasn't asking out loud. I didn't pull away. Silence stretched, thick and deliberate. And in that silence I realized desire doesn't always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it comes softly, and waits for you to let it stay. His fingers lingered at my wrist, warm, steady. Not pulling. Not claiming. Just there, present in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. My pulse betrayed me, fluttering beneath his touch, and I saw his thumb shift as if he felt it too. You're shaking, he said quietly. I laughed under my breath, a soft, brittle sound. It's cold. He didn't call me out. He just stepped closer, enough that his knee brushed mine. The contact sent a sharp awareness through my body, like a wire pulled too tight. The counter was solid at my back now, grounding and trapping me all at once. From the living room, the lamp cast a soft glow across his face. Shadows moved when he breathed. I noticed how carefully he was watching me, like he was reading something I hadn't said aloud. If you want me to go, he said, say it. There it was. The exit. Clear. Offered. I opened my mouth and closed it again. Instead, I lifted my hand and rested it lightly against his chest. Just for balance, I told myself. His heartbeat was strong beneath my palm, faster than I expected. That surprised both of us. He inhaled sharply. That's not saying it. I know. The word came out barely above a whisper. His hand slid from my wrist to my forearm, slow enough that every inch of contact registered. My skin prickled in its wake. When his fingers reached my elbow, he paused, waiting again. The restraint was unbearable. I nodded once. A small movement. Enough. He leaned in, stopping just short of my mouth. I could feel his breath now mingling with mine. The space between us vibrated with everything we weren't doing. This stays here, he murmured, as if promising me something. Or warning me. My eyes closed on instinct. When his forehead rested gently against mine, the contact felt intimate in a way that unraveled me. I exhaled, my shoulders dropping, surrendering to the moment I'd been resisting all night. I didn't kiss him. Not yet. But I let myself stay right there, balanced on the edge of a decision I knew I was already losing. When he finally lifted his head, the absence felt louder than the contact had been. His eyes searched my face, slow and deliberate, as if he were memorizing something he wasn't sure he'd be allowed to remember later. My hand was still on his chest. I hadn't noticed I'd left it there until his fingers closed gently around my wrist, not stopping me, just acknowledging me. You're sure? He asked. The question wasn't about staying anymore. I didn't answer with words. I shifted my weight just enough that my body chose him before my mind could interfere. My hip brushed his thigh. The contact was unmistakable. Intentional. Something changed in his expression then, control giving way to honesty. He leaned in, and this time I didn't stop him. The kiss was slow, careful, almost restrained. His mouth brushed mine like he was testing whether this was real, whether I'd pull back at the last second. I didn't. I softened into it instead, a quiet sound leaving me before I could catch it. The room disappeared. His hand found my waist, firm and warm through the fabric of my clothes. I felt myself respond instantly, my body arching slightly, breath deepening, every nerve sharpening. It scared me how natural it felt. How familiar. Like I'd been waiting to be touched exactly this way. We broke apart just long enough to breathe. I thought about this, he admitted, his voice low. More than I should have. So did I said, surprised by my own honesty. He smiled at that, not triumphant. Relieved. Another kiss followed, deeper now, less cautious. My fingers curled into his jacket, pulling him closer without thinking. The counter pressed harder into my back. His knee slid between mine, not forcing, just present. The implication alone made my pulse race. Somewhere in the house my phone buzzed. Neither of us moved to check it. In that moment the world had narrowed to breath, heat, and the dangerous comfort of being wanted. And I let myself forget everything else. The buzz came again, my phone persistent this time. The sound cut through the room like a crack in glass. I felt him tense before I did. His hand stilled at my waist, thumb pressing once unconsciously, as if grounding himself. We didn't break apart immediately. We just stayed there, mouths barely touching, breaths uneven. "You should," he started. "I know." I didn't move. I reached back blindly and silenced the phone without looking. The screen lit up for half a second before going dark again. He noticed. Of course he did. Something flickered in his eyes, not guilt. Permission. "You didn't even check," he said. "I know who it is." The words settled between us, heavier than anything else I'd said that night. His forehead dropped to my shoulder. I felt his breath there, warm through the thin fabric of my shirt. One of his hands slid up my back, slow, deliberate, tracing the line of my spine like he was learning it by heart. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, not lifting his head. I closed my eyes. Instead, I turned my face toward his, brushing my cheek against his temple. My hand slid from his chest to his neck, fingers curling there instinctively. I felt his breath hitch at the contact. That was my answer. He lifted me just enough to reposition us, my back still to the counter, his body fitting into mine like it had been waiting. His mouth found the sensitive place beneath my ear, not kissing, hovering. The anticipation made my knees weaken. I gasped quietly, my grip tightening. He stilled again, listening to me like that sound mattered. "This is dangerous," he said. "Yes." I didn't pull away. The danger was the point. When his lips finally touched my skin, the sensation rippled through me. Slow, consuming, intimate in a way that felt almost reverent. I melted into him, my body answering questions my mind refused to ask. Outside, the house stayed quiet. Inside, something crossed a line it could never step back from. We moved without speaking, guided by instinct and the quiet permission we'd already given each other. He led me out of the kitchen, our fingers loosely entwined, not rushed, not hidden. The living room felt different now, darker, softer. The lamp cast long shadows across the floor, stretching and blurring the edges of things. He stopped near the couch, not pulling me down, just turning to face me. For a moment we simply looked at each other. His hands framed my face, thumbs warm against my cheeks. I felt seen in a way that made my chest ache. Vulnerable. Desired. Afraid. All at once. "This changes things," he said. "I know." I leaned in first this time. The kiss wasn't careful anymore. It wasn't reckless either. It was slow, deep, intentional. Like we were stepping forward together instead of falling. His hand slid into my hair, loosening it from its tie, letting it spill down my back. The sensation sent a shiver through me I didn't bother to hide. I felt myself soften completely, every practiced boundary dissolving under his attention. When his hands moved down my sides, tracing familiar curves with unfamiliar reverence, my breath caught. I pressed closer, craving the contact, the closeness, the way my body felt awake under his hands. We sank onto the couch together, movement uncoordinated, inevitable. His weight settled against me, grounding and intoxicating. I could feel the tension in him, the restraint still there even now. It made everything sharper. Somewhere my phone buzzed again. This time I felt it between us. I froze. He did too. For a long second the world rushed back in, the house, the hour, the life waiting just beyond this room. He lifted his head slightly, searching my face, giving me one last chance to pull away. I didn't reach for the phone. Instead, I wrapped my arms around him and held him there, my forehead pressed to his shoulder, my breath uneven but certain. That was the moment I knew. Not that I'd gone too far, but that I was exactly where I'd chosen to be. Later, much later, we lay tangled in the quiet we'd created. The lamp was still on, dim now, casting a soft halo over the room. His jacket lay forgotten on the floor. One of my shoes was missing. I noticed these things the way you notice details after something irreversible. Too late for them to matter, too clear to ignore. He brushed his thumb along my arm, absent-minded, slow. Not possessive. Thoughtful. You never corrected me, he said finally. I felt my chest tighten. The words weren't an accusation. They were an observation. I know. He propped himself up on one elbow, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time and the last. That wasn't nothing. No, I said. It wasn't. Silence stretched again, different now. No longer charged with anticipation but with consequence. My phone lit up on the coffee table, the screen glowing insistently. I didn't need to see the name. I already felt it. He noticed. Of course he did. You should answer, he said gently. I nodded, but I didn't reach for it right away. Instead, I traced the line of his shoulder, committing the warmth of him to memory. The ordinary intimacy of the gesture made my throat ache. This wasn't love. I knew that. But it was choice. And when I finally picked up the phone and stood, the room felt altered, as if it would always remember what happened here, even if no one else ever knew. At the door he paused. Looked back at me once. You didn't say you were alone, he said quietly. You let me believe it. I met his gaze. Steady. Honest. Sometimes, I said, silence is the decision. The door closed behind him with a soft final click. And I stood there alone at last, knowing the quiet would never feel innocent again.